Today's episode is brought to you by Overwatch League All-Star Weekend.
It's high noon.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to High Noon Podcast, the competitive Overwatch podcast. I'm your host, Blevins. With me, as always, is Deathblow. What's up, buddy?
Oh, not too much, man. Just trying to rewind unwind after the stress of watching Finland in the World Cup.
Mm-hmm.
They were far from boring, so somebody rooting for them, it was a little bit stressful for a bit there, but they got in.
Yeah, we'll talk more about the World Cup in just a bit. I don't want to talk too much about it before.
Jump the segment.
Yeah, I don't want to jump. Let's just do the closing right now, so we don't have to do it later. We're not going to count our chickens before they hatch. Actually, that's not a good analogy. Whatever. We're just gonna stop talking about stuff that I think I know about, and move on to the stuff I do know about, which is the stuff that's been going on in the world of High Noon Productions. Blackwatch Report churning on as always with new episodes, Path to Pro episodes, contenders, all sorts of juicy stuff in the Tier 2 scene. Make sure you check them out on their own podcast feed, their own YouTube. Everything is separate from us, except they're in the High Noon Productions family, and we consult and do all that good stuff. But definitely check them out. We had Kyle on last week, who's one of the hosts, who gave us some awesome prospects, and we're gonna continue that stuff on again. ATP this week is going to be happening again. It's going to be on Wednesday for scheduling reasons. We're doing it on Wednesday Wednesday at 8 Eastern. Here at twitch.tv/High Noon Podcast. So definitely check that out. Your favorite ESPN, definitely not a knockoff of Around the Horn show, Around the Payload, coming back on Wednesday. We talked about it last week, and I think we hinted about it 2 weeks ago, the good old esports announcement. We had hexagrams on our Overwatch League talent interview series to kick it off. That episode is up. We interviewed him on Wednesday of last week. I'm proud and pleased to announce the second guest that is going to be on the in the series is going to be Mr. X, who we've actually never interviewed before. So very intrigued to talk to him. That's going to be on August 31st, which I believe is a Friday, if I remember back from when I was scheduling it. I can just look. Yeah, Friday, August 31st. That's going to be at 7 Eastern here at twitch.tv/High Noon Podcast. So definitely check that out.
I'm already writing short jokes for that one, and we'll have an entire section of that interview just about the box meme from early in the season. Was that even preseason? I think maybe they did the box meme. I don't know, but it was hilarious.
I think there was like one week where they didn't have it, and then immediately the next week he grew a foot, and then the box came out. But yeah, so I'm super excited to see that, because I don't. And maybe I'm just not up on all of the other media that's coming out, but I don't know if I've ever seen a Mr. X Overwatch interview that's not part of the Overwatch League. I don't know if anyone has had him on, or
I don't either. I will say that we have an exclusive, and we'll just assume that's a fact and not double check it, as we want to do when it comes to facts here. So.
Yeah, it's a maybe exclusive, although it's not exclusive, because if he wanted to do another interview, I'm not going to stop him. But it's going to be exclusive. He can only do one interview for a show called High Noon Podcast. It's got to be ours. He can't do any other shows that are called High Noon Podcast. He can't do shows for. So that means you can't go on the ESPN show High Noon. That's what I'm saying. I'm calling you out, ESPN, you plagiarists. JK.
We were slightly more clever than you when we said the name of your show.
They did. Yeah. Whoa. I didn't steal the name. I heavily.
It was an homage.
It was an homage. Imitation is the greatest form of flattery, is what they say. But let's move on here to a little bit of. Oh, I didn't cue it up. It's gonna take forever now.
It's news.
There it is. Little bit of news this week. We talked about the Overwatch League All-Star Weekend, and we talked about the formats, but now we've got the actual times. There's a nice little graphic here. I got it from Reddit. It's going to be on August 25th at 4 p.m. We're going to have the Lucio Ball Showdown. 5, we're going to have Mystery Heroes. At 6, we're going to have the quarters and semifinals of the Widowmaker 1v1. 7:30 is the Talent Takedown, which I think, with the exception of maybe the Widowmaker battle, I'm most looking forward to the Talent Takedown. Like, I don't care about Lucio Ball. I don't care about Mystery Heroes. I don't care about Lockout Elimination. Widowmaker is kind of cool. I think that'll be the highlight. I mean, the actual match too will be good too, but the Talent Takedown, yeah, the actual match might be good. The Talent Takedown is what I'm looking forward to, and I think we've already started to see some of the smack talk online as well. Bren and Sideshow have been poking some jabs. I was in Hexagrams' stream earlier. Good stuff happening. And then
Golden Boy's been tweeting some fire out there too.
It's good stuff. It's what it needed to be.
They're getting into the spirit of it. We just need the broadcast to carry that through. But yeah. I think it will.
I think so too. And then 9:30 is the Widowmaker 1v1 finals, which I got to imagine is probably going to be pretty hype. And then the official All-Star game is on the 26th, the day after at 11 a.m. So,
if by pretty hype with the Widow 1v1 duel you mean blasphemous that Linkser's not included, then
yeah, I mean, but Pine is, so the person that really deserved to be there is.
Just they're only missing the best Widowmaker in the league. That's all they're missing from this. So I guess for what it's worth, enjoy it, have a good time. I don't know. Just missing the
I don't know. I don't know how many people would agree with you that
I mean, I can get clips
Widowmaker than Pine.
I can get clips of every single owl caster, at least in the Widow versus Widow duel. I can get clips of just about every caster or talent member saying it at one point during the season.
You know what? Let's just put it out there. Reply to this if it's on Twitter, if it's on YouTube or whatever. Say who do you think is the better Widowmaker. We'll get a number for you. And maybe I'm not even gonna bother the casters.
I would be very curious to know how many people are wrong.
Yeah, let's see it. Reply here. This is the question of the week, which I'm coining now. I don't know how we've done 131 episodes and never once had a question of the week, which is seems like a good idea. That's the question of the week here. We need to make a drop for question of the week. Who's the better Widowmaker, Pine or Linkser? Because we're not going to be able to find out that specific matchup in the All-Star game because one of them didn't even make it. Just saying. It's obviously Pine. But I didn't say that. I don't recall mentioning.
So we're up to one wrong person so far. That's good.
Yeah, I'm voting for Pine just in case anyone didn't know. Let's move on here, and for the first time in a couple of weeks, let's do.
It's tournament talk.
We have matches to talk about. Yay. Something happened. We had the South Korean stage. I forget what it's actually called, but that group played out for the Overwatch World Cup. And to the surprise of, I think, no one, South Korea is advancing, and we both predicted Finland here, but it was much closer than it was for South Korea. But South Korea and Finland are making it to BlizzCon. South Korea finished with a match record of 5-0, game record of 19-2. Notably, this is the first two group maps that they've lost in the group stage since the beginning of the Overwatch World Cup 2 years ago. Finland finished with a match record of 4-1, game record of 16-4. Russia barely missed it here at 3-2 with a 12-7 game record. Japan 2-3, 8-12. Chinese Taipei 1-4, 5-15, and poor Hong Kong 0-20, 0-5. And Deathblow is at 0-1 with unmuting his mic.
I just saying it. I just gave an oof.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a rough go for Hong Kong, but again, I think that was to be expected. We didn't expect much from, I don't think, Chinese Taipei or Hong Kong.
Yeah.
But really the highlights here was there was a couple of takeaways, and that is either Finland or Russia, I think, could have easily gotten out of here. There was two very, very exciting matchups in this qualifier stage. Both of them featured Finland.
Yep.
Finland went to the full 5 maps against South Korea in their matchup there, all the way to the brink. It was to the last second on point 3 of the tiebreaker Koth map to decide, and even with 30 seconds left, it looked like Finland was going to win, but South Korea stole the point at the last second and was able to steal that victory away. Crazy, crazy close, which tells me South Korea is very human going into the World Cup. If they were potentially beatable in the group stages, then you have to think in the top 8. And in the final showdown there's going to be some teams that can at least give them a good run for their money. Finland will be one to be there as well, so they've certainly got a shot. And then Finland versus Russia was a phenomenal matchup. Gave a little insight to me into how Finland operates too. They rolled out against Russia, and they were playing Taimu on the Widowmaker, and then Linkser was kind of doing the flexing around a little bit, and mostly Hanzo, stuff like that. Lost the first map, drew the second map, said, all right, Yuri, it's time to go, give it a go on the Widowmaker. And Taimu said after the fact, that's their plan, right? Is as a team, they view themselves as relative equals on Widow. We just went over my opinion on that conversation. But so, they said basically in order to be our Widowmaker, you need to be feeling it at the time. And, Taimu gave it a couple maps, wasn't really feeling it. So they switched it up. The moment Linkser took over the Widowmaker, Finland did not drop another map, ended up leaving that 2-1. So Yuri with a really, really strong performance there in that matchup in particular. It was a lot of fun to watch that one as well. So 2 great matches from Finland. And then South Korea, even against Russia, I think they 4-0'd there. So wasn't a ton of great matchups if you were following the South Korean squad. But just it's fun to watch those guys play as a team, because they don't normally get to. And it's really, it looks more like you're watching an Overwatch League All-Star game than the Overwatch League All-Star game is going to, I have a feeling. As fun as the All-Star weekend is, that's its point as fun, and the World Cup is about winning, especially for South Korea, it feels like. So it's just been, honestly, it was a treat to watch those guys group up and play together, and it's a little weird to see Fate running around with the NYXL players, Jonak behind them. It's just goofy, it's different, and it was a lot of fun. So really looking forward to seeing them when their matchups are going to be a little more closely contested across the board in the top 8. I think it's going to be an absolute blast to watch them lose.
Yeah, and it seems like the last 2 years, South Korea was like, not only from a skill and cohesion perspective, just like a league above the rest of the teams, but also it seemed like from the beginning, South Korea took this super seriously and was like, we want to win this, we're going to practice to win this. Whereas like the first year, maybe a couple of teams did, and they didn't. It just seemed like the first year South Korea just like they were playing Overwatch, and the rest of the guys were just like, let's just go and play. Let's just go to BlizzCon. We're getting our trip to BlizzCon. We're gonna go play, and then we'll go walk around the convention center. Whereas South Korea was like, we're going to win this. It's not going to be close, and it wasn't. And then year 2, there's a little bit more, like, I think USA really put in a good effort. A couple other teams really kind of did as well. Canada notably did quite well. France as well in that year 2, but it still seemed like there were some teams that just didn't do it. This year it seemed like every team is like, we're doing this to win. We're putting in the time, the effort, the grind, especially since, a lot of these players, there's a lot more riding here, right? Like a lot of these players, you look at Fraggy, even like Taimu, maybe not as much Taimu, but some of the other Shadowburn, like those players are on Overwatch League teams, but they're not playing right now. So, Shadowburn notably had a really, really good performance in the Overwatch World Cup. Obviously, they're not making it to BlizzCon, but Shadowburn kind of reminded everyone like, hey guys, I was the dominating force at the beginning half of the season. Remember me? Like, I'm still really, really good. So even if that doesn't get him a starting spot on Philly, maybe that, like, this is all, you know, pseudo sort of tryouts and marketing for themselves on other teams, whether it be an expansion team or maybe a trade in the offseason, if not, you know, a starting role type of position in on their own team right now. The other thing I wanted to note here,
to highlight that point before you move on, very specifically, I thought I was able to identify a couple players that I think played at an Owl caliber on the Russian team. The tank line, Tonic was phenomenal from what I got to see of him this past weekend. Tao Zhao or Chow or however you say it, as well as his tank partner there, was another one that I thought really stepped up. I think both of those players could have landed themselves some tryouts and some scrim blocks with some Overwatch League teams, just to give them a closer look, just based off of their performance. So that's something to keep in mind as well, as we have these, and we're going to be talking today about prospects and possible signings. And spoiler alert, none of them come from South America, none of them come from Pacific, or you know what I mean. And so all these regions are relatively untapped and a little bit unknown, and there's players from them that really are getting their best opportunity to put something on tape and grab some attention. So even on the teams that maybe didn't perform very well,
Japan
keep an eye out for those.
I forget the name, but one of their DPS players was really good.
Japan, I thought, looked much better than I expected them to. It didn't quite pan out for them, obviously, in the results. But again, 2 and 3, when you look at their 3 losses, you know, South Korea, Finland, Russia, like those were teams that could have all easily made it to BlizzCon here. So I thought Japan acquitted themselves quite well, and maybe some of those guys did as well.
Yeah, I mean, you look at a player like EQO, who is a relative unknown player.
Sleepy.
Sleepy as well. Like
Note.
There's plenty of players. Like, this is a foot in the door for a lot of these players, I think. And like, there's a potentially 6 teams, so I guess half of the team. There's adding 50% of the players to Overwatch League in this next season. Like, there's a lot of open spots. There's going to be a lot of players, or at least some players, that aren't going to have their contracts renewed or stepping down, etc. There's a lot of open spots on these Overwatch League teams wanting to fill out their roster. So everything I believe
Monkey
matters.
Prince is the name of the Japanese DPS player, Depp.
Yes,
he was, I believe, their Widowmaker, and had some absolutely phenomenal stretches and kept them in maps they otherwise wouldn't have been in. So shout outs to Depp.
Yeah, I think this almost feels like the first year that everyone is like, hey, we're really putting forth our best foot, because everything, like, we talked about this last year with the Overwatch World Cup. Like, everyone's putting their best foot forward because it's like almost like pseudo tryouts for Overwatch League. But like, in hindsight, like, a lot of those teams were probably already made when this happened. Also, players we now have a sense of like how the league works and how all that is. So the players that maybe were like on the fence of whether they want to do Overwatch League or not, like, they now know what to expect for Overwatch League. So the players that are on the teams are like, hey, I really want to try because I really want to make it. And maybe some of the players that were just like, I just want to play for fun, maybe they're not playing on these Overwatch World Cup teams, because I think that this is a really good spot for those players looking to go to the next level. So I was really impressed with this group stage. I mean, we've had good groups in this group here. We've had decent groups in the past, but I don't remember them being like, there's like maybe 1 or 2 that were good in the previous years, but this one was very good. I'm hoping that the other ones are going to be just as good. I mean, there's 2 of the next 3 groups, we were like, it's a die roll to see who, it's a roll of the dice to see who progresses here. So hopefully we'll see some really great performances out of those teams.
Yeah, but next up is the USA qualifiers, so keep an eye out for that. That's Canada, Austria, USA, Brazil, Switzerland, and Norway, and they start on looks like that is September 7th. So definitely keep an eye out for that. That will be middle of the day. I'm not sure if the 7th, I'm looking it up right now. That is a Friday. So unfortunate for the people that live in the United States and have, jobs. But I think the big matchups, the ones you really, really, really want to see, should be actually on the weekend. So like Canada versus US. There is the Brazil versus Canada. If Brazil's going to make a run for it, they're going to have to beat either Canada or the US. So that one is a little bit smack dab in the middle of your workday, but the at least the big headliner, the USA versus Canada. Looking, that is on day 3. Yes, that is the closer. So that'll be September 9th at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard.
Oh man, and that could have but depending on how the matches line up, that could be a win-in for the team, and the other team doesn't.
It could be a win-in, right? Because if one of them slips to Brazil, that doesn't mean Brazil makes it, right? Because if the team that loses to the Brazil is able to beat their counterpart among the favorites,
or if they both lose to Brazil,
well, all right, calm down.
Well, I'm saying I'm saying in the most hype, to make this match the most hype. If
definitely
the winner gets in and the loser doesn't get in. Because it's not hype if they play and they're just playing for seeding and they've got 1 and 2 locked up. That's not as hype. It's
still pretty hype to me because
it's a little bit hype, but it's not even close to as hype as the loser doesn't make it to BlizzCon and the winner does.
Right. They're 10 minutes from the venue when they're doing this. Don't get to go. It'll be really, really interesting. It could be everything at play for that one, and then there could also be one of the teams
could be a snooze fest.
Could be facing elimination, right? Like if they lose, they're out or something along those lines. But there could be a ton to play for, and it could just be all about seeding. But if it does become all about seeding, don't let Blevins' pessimism fool you.
I'm not saying it's not going to be hype. It's not going to be as hype.
The seeding could be everything because now we know. South Korea has that 1 seed. So the difference between the 1 and the 2 seed coming out of this qualifier basically means you don't have to play South Korea for the whole round there in the quarterfinals, and that could be a really big deal. We saw Canada's run to the finals last year was basically predicated on being on the opposite end of the bracket as South Korea. So
nice. Okay, let's move on here and let's move to this next segment here.
Let's break it.
Last week, we talked with Kyle Wynn from the Blackwatch Report about some of the top prospects in NA from contenders and just the Tier 2 scene. That was a really great episode. If you haven't listened to that, definitely go back and check that one out. But this week, we're going to we talked about the players from the Tier 2 scene and do they look like they're Overwatch League caliber players, yes or no, kind of talk about that. This week, we're going to talk about the Overwatch League teams that are already there and established and kind of look at how they can punch up their rosters. Like, are there some maybe either trades or I think we're mostly talking about acquisitions here, but different spots that teams like, I don't know, I'll just think of a random example. Houston Outlaws and a Tracer player. Like, maybe that's something that could happen in this season too, in this offseason.
Like NYXL and a playoff coach. If you
yeah. I mean, I'm perfectly fine with that. I would love it if they just bring in Bobby Knight. Like, let's just I want to see Bobby Knight coach the New York Excelsior.
I want Jim Morris so we have an excuse to interview him and we can make him say the playoffs.
Yeah.
That's what we
I don't want NYXL watching Allen Iverson videos anymore. Practice. We're talking about practice. Yes, I'm talking about practice. That thing you need to do.
Do it.
Yeah, please do. Okay,
but yeah, we're trying to identify here is the weaknesses for each team. So this isn't always going to be. We think they're cutting a player. There's times it is, but there's also times when it's just adding competition and the bench to compete with the starter, things like that. There's depth conversations to be have, although in the case of like NYXL, where that's what we expect them to do is make depth, we're going to kind of skip that one. We're also going to kind of skip the Dragons because, hey, guess what? They need an Overwatch League team. They don't have one.
Yeah.
So there's too many opportunities and too many directions they can go with that for us to try to pin it down. They're basically an expansion team, so we'll kind of skip them for this conversation as well. But for the other 10 teams, we're going to try to identify the spots where they're weakest, the spots where their roster could use some bolstering, and then we're going to suggest some players. So if you are a GM for one of these teams, get your pen and paper out, or just Discord DM me, bro.
Yeah, so we're going to start here. We're going in no particular order. They were just how the teams rattled off my brain. But we're going to start with the Florida Mayhem, literally. We're going to start with the Florida Mayhem here. Main tank is a big one for them. Swoosh just was not cutting it. He didn't start as a main tank player. He kind of shifted into that role later on in his career, and he was passable, but you don't need to be passable in the Overwatch League. There's a giant pool of talent to go after. Awesome guy did not live up to his name as much as needed. I mean, there's other places to go for the Mayhem as well. But let's start with the main tank. What are we looking at here? And before we go in, I want to shout out Monkey Prince, who's a Around the Payload regular. He came in and consulted with us beforehand because he is a walking encyclopedia of Overwatch knowledge and tier 2 Overwatch knowledge. So it was just easier for us to talk with him beforehand and have him rattle off stuff that would have taken us dozens of minutes to look up.
He could make sure I didn't basically mentally place these guys in the wrong roles or something like that. So,
right.
Big thanks to TMP for the assist on these lists here. But yeah, for the Mayhem in their main tank role, like I said, I don't expect them to cut Awesome Guy. He wasn't bad, but he didn't live up to his name. I think they do let Swoosh go, and they're going to bring in somebody to probably take over the main tank roles for Awesome Guy, maybe use him on the bench. They could cut him as well. I don't really know. It could go either direction there. But some of the big names here, I think Panker is as far as English speakers go, I believe he is Korean, but he's been on an NA contenders team this whole time, so presumably not going to be a problem to integrate him into an English speaking roster. If the Gladiators don't re-sign him or call him up to the main roster and he hits free agency, I think he would be an absolute steal for the Mayhem. I also think Swoon or wow, I'm going to be, so many of these names are going to be brutal. SWON from NRG is another very good option there as well. He would probably be more of a competitor with Awesome Guy, but hopefully, sometimes just the presence of that person on the roster elevates you to perform better. And then I talked about him earlier, Tonic from Russia. I was really, really impressed. There's some obvious, major EU ties in this team. So I think they might like the idea of bringing in an EU player. And I think Tonic is certainly that. And who knows? We haven't gotten to see Reinforced yet on the stage. I'm just saying, just throwing it out there. Kind of, if those guys get together and hang out and can, get along well enough, that's not anything I think I could rule out.
They're playing in the World Cup together, so a lot of them are. Yes. And also in the vein of the Mayhem, we had, I like to call them the sleepers because they're both Z's, the Zebasai and Zappis. The supports did not, they just were not up to snuff for the Overwatch League. Definitely room for improvement there. Who do you see as potential either replacements or additions for the Mayhem support line?
Yeah, so there's a couple different combinations here, and the first one might not be possible because I do really expect them to sign as a team. But if the Mayhem could pull Twilight and Slime from Runaway, I think it would be an absolute coup for them.
Well, yeah.
They've got some Korean speakers there already, so there's not going to be any hesitancy, I think, if they were able to pull, the dream team there. Again, Runaway feels likely to me to sign it with an expansion team as a full roster, but we will have to wait and see. The other options here is they can kind of build their own duo, and I think Crimzo and Cruz would make a really, really good support line that the Mayhem would be able to take good advantage of. Again, there's a lot of flexibility here because of the already present Korean players and also the already present English-speaking Europeans there. They really have all their options open. You know, some of these teams were like, well, we can only look at Korean players because that's all they're gonna consider. But this isn't one of them. So I think either of those two support lines would be really, really big for the Mayhem. So those are the players I'm going to tie to them now. A lot of options, but those are the ones that stand out to me as the absolute best bets for the Mayhem if they can.
Yeah, sorry, I was looking something up. Yeah, let's move on here. Seoul Dynasty obviously did not live up to the expectations from the beginning of the season. Ranked by many, I think by most people, as number 1 or 2. I don't think we even saw them lower than that. But a lot of maybe tension in that locker room, a lot of uncertainty, at least from our perspective, of what that team's going to be doing. One of the players that really just was really, really hyped in the preseason and then just did not live up to that was Miro. We've seen what Miro can do, and it's not everything, which is what we thought it was when we saw him, I think, 2 years ago at the Overwatch World Cup. So main tank position potentially open there. What do you think in depth for Seoul Dynasty main tank?
Sure. So we've talked about this before. It's the one thing that makes the most sense to me. Seoul needs to erase that season with a quickness. They need to make a big move. They need to spend some money. They need to buy somebody. That somebody, in my mind, should be Fissure. No price should be too high for them. I think that it's the perfect marriage of a roster that understandably and given what they currently have is going to stay almost entirely Korean. So I think Fissure is the absolute perfect fit there. Again, this is another spot where Panker would fit great. There's a ton of options for the direction this one could go. In particular, you have, was it Bumper from Runaway as well as another one that I think could fit in there pretty well. And then, man, I wasn't as comprehensive as I wanted to be. Roar from Kongdu Panthera is another option that I think would fit in pretty well for the Seoul Dynasty. Maybe you keep Miro, or probably, I don't know. They didn't use Kuki enough to me to be somebody they would want to keep. So I think they're going to keep most of their roster together. I think they were getting enough out of their DPS play to kind of warrant keeping at least, Munchkin and Fleta together. And then maybe they can just make a couple changes with the main tank and the support line, the main support specifically, and kind of boost things there. So yeah, Fissure or Panker are the absolute dream. And then, they can pull in Roar or Bumper or somebody else if they needed to. I think those two guys would also be.
Yeah, I mean, the other position here for Dynasty has got to be their Lucio and their main support, Lucio Mercy player. They have Toby and Gambler there, but again, Toby was another one of those players that just didn't live up to the expectation that we hit, the expectation we had for him going in. So potential either expansion. I mean, right now they have 11. So really, they if they're going to bring in multiple people, they have to let go of some players. But who are some main supports that might be able to come into Seoul Dynasty?
Sure. So TMP taught me how to pronounce it, and then I forgot. Jexi or Jexe or Jexa, whatever, from Element Mystic, I think is a strong possibility here. Coma from Kongdu, and again, it's going to come up a lot. Slime from Runaway would be great. Yeah. If they could pull that break it. If there's a team that can break them up, it's going to be the Seoul team, though. I'll say that. So yeah, I think there's a non-zero chance that they can pick and choose who they want, and maybe they grab both of them. Maybe they grab Twilight too, and just say, let him play from behind Jae Hong a little bit. And this one's a little tougher to say because to me the main support position is so much more about fit. I don't think there was a major issue from a mechanical standpoint for any of the supports that Seoul had, but there was just the cohesion wasn't there, the teamwork wasn't there. So it's going to need to be somebody that fits, best with the team. But those three names do stand out to me as players.
Yeah. One other thing to mention for Soul Dynasty main tank is, dude, they don't need one. They already have one. It's J-Hong. J-Hong main tank.
Good lord.
Never again, please. Actually, go for it. I don't care if you win or lose.
Right. Yeah, I don't care.
All right, let's move on here to the Boston Uprising, a team that I know is near and dear to your heart, Death.
Dead to me? Yep.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah. But they notably lost their key mark flex DPS player.
He who must not be named.
Exactly. Yeah, you know who it is, so I'm not going to go into it. But they lost that. I mean, Mistakes did come in and was serviceable, was actually quite good, and showed up and actually did pretty decently in the Overwatch World Cup as well on Team Russia. But, perhaps, I mean, they're going to want more depth, if nothing else, if not just an outright replacement for their flex DPS spot. So what is it looking like in the world of flex DPSs that could go to the Boston Uprising?
Sure. So for Boston, I almost think this is going to need to be done by committee a little bit. They're going to probably need to sign multiple players to pull this off. They need both a Widowmaker and that Genji Pharah Hanzo. So the guy needs to be a true slash that can play, just about all the heroes, a real true DPS. This is a spot where I want to bring up a trade. Shadowburn's too good to not be on a roster somewhere, so let's trade for him, bring him in. He fills a good number of those roles. We even saw a little bit of Widowmaker from him, which was better than I expected it to be in the World Cup. So I think he might be very serviceable for all of their needs there. Assuming that doesn't happen, we have Decay from Kong Du, Godsby, we have Haxel, we have Hureg. That's just like I said, it's going to probably have to be multiple people. A couple of those guys are able to play, one or two of those heroes at the absolute highest level, but maybe not all four of what they need, because you just don't want to be moving Striker off what he's, very possibly the best in the world at. So you want to just kind of leave him locked onto the Tracer as often as humanly possible and let the other guys do some flexing. So I don't know. Hureg to me really does stand out as somebody that I think will get an opportunity here. And they're another team that can go either direction. They're currently holding Korean players. They're currently holding Canadian, English-speaking players, and so they can go either direction they want as far as what nationality they're bringing in. So it's a very open conversation. But I'm actually expecting, two DPS players to be signed for this team.
One that I think we mention on a later team that definitely could fit here. Mangachu is another one that kind of fits that role. Genji Pharah Hanzo, I'm not 100% sure about his Widow, but he could. It seems like that would be a natural fit for him as well.
If there was something to the slasher rumors with this team that they wanted to get off of the Korean talent, move more into the English speaking talent, maybe you see a combination of somebody like IDDQD, and then you also see a Mangachu come in, somebody that has that hit scan specialty that can play the McCree, if it comes, it's kind of in vogue right now, to be perfectly honest with you. And then he's got some ability to play like the Sombra, things like that. And the Widowmaker as well, I think is something he's been working on. I don't know exactly where it's at, but assuming his Widowmaker is up to snuff, and then you have Mangachu for the Pharah and the Genji, and that kind of conversation when it becomes more of a projectile thing. Yep, gotta have that Tor blocked up. So yeah, definitely, there's, especially with this one for the Uprising and what they need, and the fact that they can use multiple players to do it, and just utilize substitutions to give themselves the best chance. It's just, there's not a lot of players that had the hero pool that Dreamcasper had, and that was to literally be top tier on the Widowmaker, the Genji, the Pharah, across the board, everything that now they need. It's probably gonna have to come from two players.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, if we believe the slash rumor that they're getting off of the kind of Korean talent, they have a lot of value in Striker. Like he is, they basically, like, you ship away Striker, and you've just got so much space to work with in terms of either value, capital, and what have you. He's definitely going to be worth a lot in terms of trading away. But let's move on here. And I don't know how much you want to talk about the fuel here, Death, but Basically, there's a lot of room for players to potentially be replaced. Siegel's already gone. Effect is, I don't know if he's confirmed 100% that he's not coming back, but
Can't imagine he is.
Also, my Magic 8 Ball says all signs point to no. I mean, even players like AKM, Mickey, Harry Hook, Chips Hyan, I don't think any of their spots are set in stone and locked away. I think we.
And
could
if I'm
lose
the
any of
Dallas
them.
GM, I don't know that I fight too hard to try to keep them, to be perfectly honest with
Right.
you, after the performance that they put out. So there's a lot that can be done here with the Dallas Fuel roster. Now, they did turn things around. Before stage 4, I would have put Unco on this list as somebody else that can go. There's even more possibilities than what we listed here, and we listed most of the roster. They have a lot of opportunity and a lot of possibilities. But what we're going to focus on in this conversation is we know we're going to need an off tank to replace Siegel. We're going to need a DPS to replace the fact that Effect isn't going to be there. Siegel's kind of leaves a gap in their DPS play as well. I didn't see anything from AKM this season that makes me think he has to stay on this roster. I thought he was good enough when you used him in the right spot, but it doesn't mean they need to keep him. I don't think if Mickey was his spot was secure. Anyways, we're just going through the list again. But we're going to look specifically at DPS players, some off tanks, and some main supports for these guys. And we'll start on the DPS side of things. Basically, my number one pickup falls in this category, and that's Nene. He is very potentially as mechanically gifted as Effect is. I need to see him on that stage before I really buy into it. I don't think the fact that he's on XL2 will be a hang up, because I don't think XL is going to promote him. But also, looking at some other names, Zachary, we'll have to keep an eye on what he's doing in the Overwatch World Cup here for Team USA, how much time he gets, how he looks. And then Decay from Kongdu Panthera. They've got Korean player. Well, Effect is Korean. I don't know how many. I don't think they're afraid to pick up Korean players. So assuming Decay can interact with and communicate with the team, I think he would be a fairly solid pickup there as well. As far as off tanks go, McGravy's sitting there on their academy team. Could very easily bring him up and call him up.
No-brainer.
Yep. It's almost a little too easy. I don't know that he's been better than a couple of the other guys.
Are you saying too easy's coming in?
Calm down. I don't know that he's been as good as some guys that I'm going to mention here now. Smex, Gods, and Tao or Zhao. These are guys that I think have put together some really good tape. I expect those guys to find their way into the league. We just don't know where exactly. So maybe they keep Mickey and then sign a player like Gods, or call up McGravy and let that be an open competition for who gets to play the off tank role. I kind of like the sound of that personally, because I don't to see Mickey get cut. That's just blasphemy. Who's going to make me smile on the Dallas Fuel roster if Mickey's gone? Nobody. That's who. It would just be all hate. I would just become a through and through Dallas hater, I guess, if they got rid of Mickey. But
instead of just the mostly through, just through,
right,
not
just
through and through.
Right, through and like THRO.
Yeah. Through and through. You're a through and through.
Most of the second through. And then as far as main supports go, we've got Ludi from Angry Titans, and then Elk, and then Jexy as again showing up on this list. He pops up a couple times. Just they need to bring somebody in that's a little more secure on the Mercy play, and then maybe they have the Lucio, but again, do you keep a player around who can only play Lucio on your starting roster? It becomes tough to do. He's in meta now. Let's see how long that lasts. Let's see what happens in the next patch. But I think one thing for sure is they're going to want players that cover all their bases, and especially in the support line, you want them Mercy / Lucio. You don't want to be swapping. Ideally, you don't want to be swapping between them because of what that does to chemistry, things like that. So I think Ludi and Elk are the two that really stand out to me as players that would be really good for Dallas. So Dallas, don't sign it.
Yeah, we've seen. I mean, NYXL is the biggest example of this. Is like you need players who can play a wide variety of heroes, and like the specific types of heroes in conjunction with the other, like you need to have your team like you have to fit the cogs together correctly so that you can like change them potentially in one map. So they got to keep that in mind. I mean, we saw a player like Big Goose, who was mostly a Lucio main, that just was able to play the Mercy. So, there's going to be some behind the scenes stuff that we don't get to see of like, oh, they're actually a serviceable Mercy, but we just haven't seen them play it because they haven't needed to play it. But let's move on here to your team, Death Outlaws.
Yep.
Do they need? Do you think they need a Tracer? Like, Tracer's not in the meta right now. You don't need it.
There's like
you don't need it.
One glaring weakness on the roster. Yeah. So listen, it's been talked about ad nauseum. They need a Tracer player. They need somebody to fill that role. I've mentioned it plenty of times, but I'm bringing it up again. Yeah. Trade for Dante, because he's sitting on the bench of the San Francisco Shock. He's not being used. I'm willing to bet Shaquille O'Neal likes money, so just give him a call. Offer him some, and maybe you can acquire that player. But honestly, I think that's probably the number 2 move I'd like to see them make. Nene's been too impressive for me not to want to see him join join my team and take us deep into the playoffs and on a championship run.
As much as it makes sense for teams to pick up Nene, I think if I'm in NYXL spot right now and I'm looking to bring on like one additional player, which for some reason I feel like they're going to bring on Flower, and then maybe they bring on one other. Do they have this? I think if they have the space on their roster to have Nene be a 2-way player, they'll just do that. Just to hoard him from other teams, like to block.
At the end of the day, Nene has to agree to that.
True.
They have the exclusive right to negotiate with him.
Right.
Nene's under no obligation to accept it.
Sure.
So if the guy wants to play, I think that's kind of the other piece of it, right?
Sure.
Maybe they would stash him just to keep him away, like Houston did with Fact Fiction.
Yeah.
But I don't think Nene would be up for that. I don't know. I always expect players to have the same mentality I would. No,
right.
I want to
play.
I want to play, and I want to win.
Well, I've been on both sides of the coin where like you're on a really good team, but you're not a starter, and maybe you don't play at all, or maybe you play very little bit. That's an all right. It's not for everyone, but it's fine. And I've also been on teams where I was the best player and we weren't that good, and I've also been on teams where I was the best player and we were good. But like, obviously you want to be the best player on the team and you're also winning and you're the greatest. Like, that's what you want, but that's not, you just don't get that every time.
But in the signing window, teams should be able to sell him on that. So I don't know. For the time being, I'm going to just assume Nene hits free agency because I just don't see how he fits into NYXL. And I would honestly probably go into hating NYXL pretty hard if they took a player like
so
it's like
I want that so bad.
It's like Fusion benching Shadowburn. It's like, okay, fine, like EQO's good, but why did you sign them both?
Right, I want to see Shadowburn play.
Right, I want to see the man on the stage.
Yeah.
So whether it's Houston or it's somebody else, like I want to see Nene on the stage competing with the Overwatch.
For sure, I agree.
Hopefully
as the starting player for the Toronto, whatever they're called, for sure. That's definitely what I want.
That's second best option. Until I know how they're branded, could be tied for best option.
Ooh, okay, all right.
But yeah, so the trade for Dante is kind of the number 2 thing. And listen, in the trade for Dante, like they do have Fact Fiction. They're not going to be using Fact Fiction.
Yeah.
Super needs some competition. He needs somebody to light a fire under him, and I think Fact might be a better tank. So I think that one too. It just it lines up too much for me to like not just ignore it and like not think it's going to happen. If there's any trade, I'm confident that should happen. It's that one.
Yeah.
But anyways, Zachary is another one here. There's been. The Outlaws were like half built off the USA World Cup team. This is 1 year too late for Zachary to have been in season 1. But now, if he can prove himself a little bit, he's had a decent run in contenders. I think he could find a home here as well. And then the last name I want to mention is one that's been around for a while, is Davin.
Yeah.
I think he's just a solid Tracer player. I don't know how deep his hero pool is. I'm not even sure what he's been up to lately, but I just know he's got, I believe, some experience with a couple of guys on the team. If I'm remembering correctly, that's why he's kind of always been linked to them.
I think so.
Maybe it's like raucous or something like that. Maybe it came from the
I'm
phase.
sure Monkey Prince or Thorn will.
Yeah, somebody's yelling at us in chat already about it. I'm sure. Well, he's finished, so he's probably got some experience with Linkser. He's currently on Gigante. He was on Rest in Pajamas. So I don't know. He's from the same country as Yuri, and Yuri's God's gift, Finland's gift to esports or whatever they say for him. So if anybody can pull him in, it would be Yuri. The other thing for the Outlaws that we want to take a look at here is, I mean, we threw Bonnie under the
bus a lot,
self-destructs a couple times because he threw himself under a couple self-destructs, and he wasn't a bad player. I don't think they need to get rid of Banny. I just think they need to, like we talked about, give him some competition on the bench, give him somebody to push him a little bit. So Elk and Adam and Fozix really come to mind as players. I don't expect this to be a Korean player. They might do that for a Tracer player, where you can just be like, okay, like a lot of Tracer players just go do your own thing and kill people anyways, whether they speak the right language or not. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, but those are to me, Elk and Adam are the ones that are the best fits, and then Fozix is kind of a dark horse candidate to maybe make it in there, but I'd like to see him add one more support player and then that Tracer.
We just got word from Monkey Prince and J5 Hreve that you were correct. It was Davin and Linkser on both Gigante and Team Finland. So
gotcha.
3 points for Gryffindor. All right, let's move on here to LA Gladiators. Again, no official confirmation or anything that Fissure is leaving, but I'm shaking my magic 8-ball here and say all signs pointing to leaving for a number of reasons. Namely, like, I don't know if I want to be on a team that just throws away their playoff chances because they think for some reason that playing Kobe is not a good idea. Like, what? Play your good player. Okay, I'm sorry. We've
there was
a number of times.
To me, there was something behind the scenes with that, but
he also mentioned that it might be easier if he played on an all-Korean team. Just kind of like casually,
and that it might be better for the Gladiators if an English speaker was their main tank. That's garbage. You wussed out and didn't want to play in the playoffs. But anyways,
I don't think it was him.
Do you think it was so him? Hard to know. You can't. It could have been either one, but it probably wasn't a mutual decision. Is what I'll say there.
Yeah.
So yeah, taking a look at potential replacements. This is one we talked about a long time ago. I'm a big Fact Fiction fan. I have been before he was a Houston Outlaw. I really think there's a very good chance that he does get traded here, and I think the Gladiators is another good fit. So maybe they make a move to try to pick up Fact Fiction. They're also the team with Panker with exclusive rights to negotiate with Panker first. So they could easily bring him up. And then TMP gave me another name here. And there's a bit of a tie-in with some of the players. That's why I liked it, and I'm including it. LH Cloudy comes from Gigante, and that's an all-Finland team. Shaz and Big Goose are both Finnish players. So it's definitely going to be a possibility there. I'm being told.
Wow.
Oh, snap.
So we just
mid-episode.
And we called it. Okay.
We literally said it before it happened.
We just got breaking news. Breaking news. LA Gladiators.
Play the high news drop.
Oh, here we go.
It's new.
Okay, we got breaking news. Okay, now it's playing like 5 times. From the LA Gladiators. Thank you, Fissure. Farewell to our glorious, most handsome main tank. You have left your gladiator mark on Legacy. We wish you the best of luck with the Soul Dynasty. Wow.
So the very first thing we said for the Soul Dynasty was I've included the trade there. I told you it made way too much sense for it to go down any other way. Fissure is now the main tank for the Soul Dynasty. That is official. Our first big roster move of the off season.
Wow.
Broken live while we were doing the show instead of 5 minutes after we turned the show off. Shout outs to both the Gladiators and the Soul Dynasty for that hookup.
Let's make some moves and inspire everyone else. Let's get them in. Come on, get them in. We're going to be recording for at least another probably 10 minutes. Come on, get them in.
6 or 7 hours we're going now, hoping to catch more news. But yeah, and that just really highlights this Gladiators conversation we're in the middle of right now. It's not Fissure replacement question mark. It's Fissure replacement exclamation point. I just edited the notes. Go trade for Fact Fiction, unless they can get Dante for him, and then back off, and then get yourself Panker or LH Cloudy from Gigante. That to me is the main thing the Gladiators need to do. I expect them to maybe move on as far as oh my god, I'm blanking on his name, the Tracer player, Asher. I expect them to maybe move on from Asher, let him go, bring in some depth. But I do think Surefour Hydration is their plan going forward. I don't expect them to be the sub team anymore. So yeah, it'll be a lot of fun to see where they go with that. But yeah, let's look at specifically if they're not trading Panker or LH Cloudy to be the team, players with ties to the organization or players on the team.
Yeah. Man, that's big and also hilarious and coincidental that it happened literally while we were talking about the LA Gladiators on this. Right. Wow, that's whew. Okay. Let's move on here and talk about the Shock. San Francisco Shock. I mean, we've talked about it for a while, but Nomi and Dahak just have not been up to snuff. So what are we looking at here for potential main tank substitutions or replacements for them?
Yeah, all we're going to talk about is the main tank for this team. There's a decent. This is another team likely to add depth, likely to shake up what some of their bench players, things like that. But very specifically for main tank, I want them to go out there and find themselves a Korean tank to pair with Choi Hyo Bin, who I thought was absolutely phenomenal for them in Stage 4. No Smite from X6, Roar from Kongdu. I think both of those are really strong options, players that could step in and compete with Super. I don't want them cutting Super or letting him go, but I didn't see the growth from him that I wanted. I didn't see, a much improved player from where he left off with like LG Evil, where we last saw him going into this season. So I need somebody on the bench behind him that can push him and make, give him a competition, something Nomi just was not able to do. That was basically as soon as they had an alternative, that was not an option anymore. Yeah, so it's going to be crazy to see what direction they go. But I do think it should be. I mean, they have their English-speaking tank that they want to develop for the future, the young guy. So go get yourself a Korean that pairs with your Korean off tank right now. I think that is a good direction that they can go and gives them some variety across the board. So,
yeah. Definitely. I mean, I think Shock, they almost had basically a new team halfway through, so they're still almost in a little bit of a test phase with some of those.
Them and the Valiant are tough, right? Because all we know about the Shock is that they're gonna want to cut Nomi and Dak, but the rest of them, did they play enough to really make a firm decision? I mean, the positives, like Architect made a decision there. Dude's ridiculous. Choi's been great, but Super, I don't think they're gonna just decide we were wrong because of the partial season or anything like that. Sometimes it makes a big difference to step in the middle of a stage versus be there from the beginning, ground one, building the strategy, everything like that. So
another thing Monkey Prince brings up is that No Smite and Cho Hyo Bin were both on X6, so that might just be you may have uncovered the answer there.
Yeah, perfect.
So the next ones here, the rest of these actually are kind of,
they're quick convos.
They're quick ones, which is fine because we're coming up on an hour here too. So Philadelphia Fusion, I think really the only thing here, the only really kind of, I don't even want to necessarily call it a weakness, or it was more of a weakness in the actual finals, was Sato. And not because of his raw skill, it was because of the communication with the rest of the team. Obviously, he's not speaking English, and it just seemed like he was just desynced from the rest of the team. So it's not necessarily the mark of a bad player, but maybe just not fitting the chemistry. For some reason, Fusion doesn't want to run Fraggy. Maybe they go back to him or something, but potentially a different English-speaking main tank to either, I don't know, mix and match with Sato. That's not Fraggy. And maybe they ship Sato and go and get some value.
Yeah, I could see him going a lot of directions here. I could see them going, okay, Fraggy was the best main tank last year. Let's bring him in. Let's not cut him. Let's let the team work with him. I could see them going, well, we know we don't want Fraggy and we want Sato, so let's cut Fraggy and find somebody else. There's a lot of directions they can go. I don't agree with any of these directions. Right. Fusion, your best option at main tank's been on your roster and playing for you in week 1 of stage 1. You just shot yourself in the foot and made that change. But so let's say they're going to add a main tank player here. Again, LH Cloudy from Gigante. We've got Christopher as well. Boombox is from England. Might want a fellow on his team there. And then also Lulsish from Angry Titans is another one that I think would make a solid fit there. Again, this is probably for a bench spot. So I think one of the two that they have is going to be better than any of these 3 signings, but I think we could see one of these 3 guys join the roster. And for some reason, Christopher stands out to me as this being a really good spot for him. Somewhere he can continue to develop. The guy we interviewed Christopher back in the day, a very, very smart guy. I think he's one of those minds that can contribute a lot from the bench. And so I think he might be, for a team that thinks they already have a tank, even though they're wrong about which one it is. I think it would be a good addition because he'd be very big to the stratting, the helping the, the starter, things like that. So I would look for maybe Christopher Lulsish as the leaders there, but LH Cloudy would be great.
I mean, honestly, I think if I'm Fusion, the way I'm looking at this is like, which team wants a good Korean main tank? And like, don't even look at it as like, oh, we want to replace Sato, but you guys can use him and maybe try to get some value out of that, and then pick up someone, or maybe just keep using Fraggy. Like any of those is fine. I mean, even keeping Sato and developing him is probably fine as well. But Fusion in a really good spot. Valiant here again. We're kind of not grasping at straws, but really like they have a pretty deep. They made a lot of moves in the off season.
And they didn't get to test a lot of them either. There was some of them that didn't really get much of an opportunity. One that did get multiple opportunities, and I don't think did anything with those opportunities, was KSF. Anytime they brought him in and tried to use him, he got absolutely dumpstered and just did kind of like was invisible. So I think maybe they cut him. And then I've only got one name to offer here. Shout outs to our boy Mangachu. We've been big fans of his for a while now. I think he is that niche role that might be able to come in and really sub in on occasion for the team. And there's got to be, I think there's things out there he can play better than Agilities. And specifically the Pharah, I think he could be an upgrade there when that's in the meta. He's shown some very good versatility and some depth to his hero pool that maybe we didn't know before his time with XL2, that I think he's going to be signed, and there's definitely no room on XL for him, so he should be able to hit free agency, and maybe that's a route the Valiant want to go. Don't sign him and not use him, LA. Don't sign him and not use him. We want to see him.
It would be very hard. I don't think Mangachu's going to NYXL just because, like, why would you
have
add
to learn Korean?
Right. Why would that would just be tough on him and the organization. I imagine who were we talking about before? Uprising is honestly not a bad spot for him, although we would maybe you would probably disown him if he went to Uprising. But I mean, Toronto. I mean, we've talked about it before. The Toronto team is where he could go, and I mean, if they got Nene and Manga,
it's okay. I'm pretty sure Mangachu is one of the 2 players that I very specifically requested that they never sign with Boston, so that I didn't have to hate them. One was Cool Matt, and the second one I believe was Mangachu. And I'm pretty sure was it Jake? No, I think you're right. I think it was Mangachu. No, it wasn't Mangachu, because we talked to Mangachu way before Overwatch League was like even a thought. Yeah. Oh yeah, that was like when the ranked ladder first hit or something like that. Yeah, that was way too early.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll never remember.
Maybe it was. It might have been Fraggy. It might have been Fraggy.
Probably was.
Okay.
That beard can't play for Robin Kraft. I won't allow for it.
It won't happen.
Okay. Last one here.
Yeah, we're gonna talk last one, Spitfire. I mean, really, the only thing, and really, this is grasping at straws. Maybe a replacement for Bird Ring. Maybe I think
So yeah, and they're in a weird spot because they value their low end, their low roster number.
Yeah.
They do have the academy team, so they can make use of some two-way players. I expect them to use those two-way players, but maybe not call them up all the time. But the one thing I thought the Spitfire could have really done better at was Widow play. And Nene and Happy. I don't know much about Happy, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. That one came from the Monkey Prince, so shout outs to him there. Just kind of a bit of a Widow specialist or a DPS player that might be able to. I think he said he's pretty streaky. But again, Birdring was just consistently underwhelming after stage 1. So I don't know that inconsistency is a big deal breaker. You just need somebody that can pop off on occasion alongside Prophet, who's going to carry no matter what you do. So yeah, I think it's worth noting we might see the Spitfire bring in an additional DPS player. Maybe try to find somebody to compete.
Maybe Rascal. Huh? Anyone? Any takers?
I feel like that's probably not going to happen. It should be a good fit. It should be, right? But something about the past makes me think.
Let bygones be bygones.
And then, of course, we have NYXL, who needs flex position / depth, and then we have the Dragons, who need 12 players for an Overwatch team.
How many contenders teams do you
11. Think? Gaguri can stay.
That's true. How many contenders teams right now do you think could get one win in the Overwatch League?
Most of them.
Okay, that's kind of where I was thinking too. But yeah, I'm very interested to see what the Dragons do, because I don't think the strategy is take your team who has learned something through the first season and wipe it and become an expansion team, a de facto expansion team. I think you want to use what you can from what you've gained from season 1, but at the same time, clean that house very, very meticulously.
Their dream scenario should be keep 2 players,
keep Dia and Gaguri. Yeah. Dia, Gaguri plus Runaway would be
use those couple players that you keep to supplement and be depth and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But they're not likely to have that happen because they're not going to have priority over the expansion.
People's
teams.
not going to want to go for those.
Will have that could be a problem too. They could be bad just because of how terrified people are of their ownership and all the problems and drama, their management, stuff like that.
And dealing with the Chinese organization, you don't if you're not a Chinese speaker, you might not want to do that. Though, I mean, Dragons, I don't think this year they unlock a bunch of the Chinese players, but potentially in 2 years, I think a lot of the good Chinese players are 18, or maybe next year. I don't know. We'll see. I'm very interested to see what I might be more interested to see what Shanghai Dragons do in this offseason than any other team, because I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if they just ran it back. And I wouldn't be surprised if they cleaned house. So I think I want to see what they do. But that is gonna be it. As per usual, we make it to an hour when we think it might be a 15-minute show. But any last stuff that you want to talk about, Death?
No, just keep an eye out. We've got the hopefully this trade breaks off a whole string of news for us for next week.
I hope so. I hope so.
To go
Slasher, give us some stuff. I'll take fake stuff, or not fake stuff. I'll take unconfirmed rumors. I'll take real stuff. I'll take everything. Ship it.
You can just follow at @slasher_news. I think is the parody account. That'll give you what you're jonesing for. I think there.
Yeah.
But no. Just keep an eye out, guys. Things are going to get really exciting. I did expect when the first move happened for things to be pretty quick after that. You don't want to. If you're a team that has a move in the bank, you want to come out now and do something to change the conversation to be about your team, right? It's a battle of news cycles to a certain extent.
Everyone's talking about Fissure right now, and
and what are the Gladiators going to do? And the Gladiators might come out with another announcement about what their next main tank is going to be, because right now none of the talk about the Gladiators is good at the moment. It's what the heck are they going to do?
Right?
So,
how did you mess up so bad?
Right. So I think we could be getting, although they're. Tell their wallets they messed up too bad because they just sold Fissure. So we'll have to wait and see, but I think things are going to start to be happening pretty quickly.
Next episode might be a real juicy one. That's what I'm hoping.
Could be.
But yeah, so that's gonna be it, guys. Thanks everyone for listening. You can always check out everything highnoonpodcast.com. You can check out the live shows, twitch.tv/highnoonpodcast. There was some technical difficulties on the Twitch side. I apologize for, but they should be fixed by next week. You can support us on all the platforms, Twitter, YouTube, all that stuff, Twitch. You can also head over to patreon.com/highnoonpodcast and become a patron. We've got all sorts of good stuff going on there, and that does help us out a ton, especially as this November we are going to be going to BlizzCon, so all the extra funds are going to be super, super, super helpful. But that is going to be it, guys. For Deathblow, I'm Blevins, and remember, it's high noon.
Got his boots and he put on his hat. Threw the coin away that same day. It's in his past and he's not looking back. He says, finding mine now, God's my way. He's not good, but he sure ain't bad. He'll make amends for the sins that he has. He says, I'll change the world one bullet at a time till I find mine.
Is it weird that arguably one of the best players and potential season MVP player in Fissure has been traded twice? It's kind of weird to think about. Just saying.